Now, let's move into 4.5, and this is the last part of Unit 4. I know it's a little bit of a shorter unit, and in here we're basically just doing informal code analysis, and we're going to see how many times a loop is going to run. So actually, I'm going to make a method so we can run our loop multiple times. So let's make a static method, a void method, because we're not going to return a value. Public static void, and not main. We'll just do n. Make it a short name so I don't type it out that much. And we're going to have a parameter called integer num. And yeah, so I'm going to write a for loop, and I want you to figure out how many times it's going to run. So let me write it out. Let me change this up a little bit. Let's do, so maybe it's going to produce an error. So if it produces an error, let me know if it's going to produce an error, or what error is it going to produce. Go. Alright, so there's my for loop. So let's call the method. Let's call the method with an argument of 5. How many times is this going to run? We can determine that by how many times it's going to print hey, or how many lines it's going to print. Alright, so I printed out 4 different lines. Let's do some analysis here for a second. So I is equal to 1, and I is going to be less than num. Num is equal to 5, so it's going to be while I is less than 5, and it's going to be while 1 is less than 5. And then we're going to add 1 each time. So it's going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. It's not going to go 5 because it's got to stay less than 5. So it's going to print out 4 different lines. What if I change this from I plus equals 1 to I plus plus? It's not going to change because I plus plus is the same as I plus equals 1. What if I change this to I is less than or equal to num? Is that going to change anything? Yes, it's going to change something because now it can be equal to num. Now it can be equal to 5, so it's going to add that next num. So yeah, that's pretty cool. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to add another statement that's just going to print out I. So we can just count it without having to count in every individual hey. We can just look at a number, and it's going to figure it out for us. Very, very cool. Okay, let's do another one. Let's do integer I is equal to -4. We're going to do while I is less than or equal to num, and we're going to increment it by 1. So let's call our method, this is Java, and we'll do 17 as our argument. So let's run this, and let's see how many times it's going to print out. Actually, I probably should change something. Let me change something real quick. Let's do integer count is equal to 0, and then we're going to print out count each time. Every time we do this, we'll increment it. Now let's do this. And this way, we can just see how many times our code prints out. So, bada dang, bada boom. As we can see here, it printed out 22 different lines. Why is it printing out 0? Well, because we initialized it as 0. So we can change this to 1, debugging a little bit. And now it's going to print out 21 different lines. Yay, exciting. Okay, 22 different lines. Sorry. Okay, I didn't do my code analysis. Okay, so why is it printing out 22 different lines? Well, for one, our argument is 17. So it's going to go up to and equal 17. So from 0 to 17, that's going to print out 18 different lines. However, I is at -4, not 0, not 1, -4. If it was at 0, we would have 18 lines, but it's not. It's at -4. So let's count backwards. So we have -1, -2, -3, -4. That's 4 more numbers, 4 more times our loop is going to run. So it's actually going to do 18 plus 4, and that means it's going to run 22 times. What if we change this to N189? Let's run this, and let's see how many lines it's going to print out. I mean, I already know how many lines it's going to print out. It's going to print out 194. Why did it print out 194? Well, from 0 to 189, it's going to print out 190 different lines because it's going to count 0 and it's going to count 189 because it is less than or equal to it. And then we have the -4, so we're going to add 4 to that, and we get 194. Let's say our argument was 0. Is our code going to run because our argument's 0? Yes, it's still going to run because I is still less than 0. And our code is still going to run. Our code's always going to run. Just will the loop do anything? Yes, it will do something. So it's going to go from -4 to 0, including 0. So it's going to go -4, -3, -2, -1, 0. I used my fingers to count how many numbers there were. There were 5 numbers, so there's going to be 5 different lines. Very, very cool. All right, let's change this code up a little bit. Let's do I is plus equal to 2. And yeah, we'll just keep it like this. And we'll turn our code over to 17. I think we already did that, though. Let's do 13 as our argument. So let's see. What's it going to print out now? How many times is it going to print out? Well, it's going to print out 9 different times because we're going to skip count by 2 now. So let's go -4. And we use my fingers to count how many numbers I say. So we start at -4. That's one finger. -2, 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. However, 14 is greater than num. So it's not going to count that. So I have 9 fingers up. It's going to print out 9 lines. I can write them out as well in a comment if you want to count them. So we could do -4, -2, 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. And that's 9 different numbers. So it's going to print out 9. What if it was, let's say, 26? What's it going to print out? Well, let's see. Chill for a second. So it's going to go, still skip count from 2, but it's going to print out 16 lines. So let's just add to here. So we have 9 numbers here. So then we have 14. That makes 10. Then we're going to do 16. That makes 11. 18. That makes 12. 20, that makes 13, 22, that makes 14, 24, that makes 15, and 26, that makes 16 numbers. And hey, 16 is the amount of lines we have. Very, very cool. Let's change this to -1. What's going to be our output? How many lines are we going to produce with hey? It's going to produce 2 different lines. It's going to go from -4 to -2. It's not going to include -1 because by the time we skip count by 2 from -2 plus 2 is 0. 0 is greater than -1, so it's not going to print out that line. What if this was -3? How many lines is it going to print out? Well, it's going to print out 1 line because it's going to count -4. So let's go -4. All right, let's print out hey. Okay, we added 2. Hold on. This for loop, this condition is now true, so we are going to move on. Sorry, the condition is now false, so we're going to move on now. So yeah, okay, let's change some things up a little bit. Let's do a force. Let's not do a force statement. Let's do an if statement. So I'm going to indent this because if something is true, it's going to print out hey. So if I divided by 2 has a remainder, that's not I. If I divided by 2 has a remainder of 0. Actually, if it doesn't have a remainder of 0, then print out hey. So when we call our method with the argument 8, how many times is hey going to print out? Let's see. So what is this if statement going to do? It's basically seeing, okay, if something divided by 2 is not equal to 0, then, hold on, let me move around my code so it doesn't print out numbers unless we absolutely want it to. There we go. I mean, we're still technically figuring out how many times hey is printed out, but it just makes it a little bit easier. Okay. So it's not going to print out any hey, any number, blah, 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 blah. Why is it doing that? Well, because the if statement is determining if the number is odd. Because if a number divided by 2 has a remainder, it's odd. But a number divided by 2 that has no remainder is even. And we use the not operator to say not equal to 0. So it's going to be looking for odd numbers. However, if I starts out as an even number, it only increases to be even numbers because we're incrementing it by 2. Then we're never going to have an odd number, so this is never going to be true, and is never going to print out hey. What if we did n is equal to 3? Are we going to have anything printed out because, hey, our argument's an odd number, so it should get to an odd number, right? Like, that's how it's going to work. No. That's not how it's going to work because it's not going to work because it's not going to actually equal 3. It's still going to be, it's going to be less than 3, but not equal 3. And by the time we add 2 to it, it's going to be greater than 3, so it's not going to run good. So, yeah, that's how that's going to work a little bit. Okay, let's do something else. Let's get rid of the for loop. And we're going to do some while loops. So we're going to do integer x is equal to 0. And then while x is less than n, it's going to print out x plus a space. So we're just going to have one line. And every time let's do this, we're going to do x plus equals 2. There's no end of parentheses here. There we go. So let's call n. We're going to have an argument, let's say 18. So how many numbers are going to be printed out? Or what's going to be the final number? The final number we know, while x is less than num, not n. Oops. N is our method. So how many times, what's our final number going to be that's going to be printed out? It's going to be 16. What's our first number? 0. It's going to be 16. So why is it 16, not 18? Well, it's because it's less than num, not less than or equal to num. So it's never going to print out something equal to num. So that's why it stops at 16. And our first number is 0 because we initialized x as 0. And it's going to print out x before we add 2 to it. But what if I do a little bit of a switcheroo here? What if I do plus equals 2 and I change my argument to 4? What's going to be our last number? Our last number is going to be 2. Our first number is also going to be 2 because it's going, it's going to be 4 because our first number is going to be 2 because we initialize x to 0, but before we print anything out, it's going to set x to plus equal 2. So what's it going to do? It's going to print out 2. But x is still less than 4. So it's going to run the code again and make it equal to 4 now, and then it's going to print out x plus our space. So that's what we're going to have 4. If this was below our print line, what's going to be our first, what's going to be our last number? Well, it's going to be 2. Well, it's going to be 0, 2. Because we're now including the 0 because we're printing out the 0 and then adding 2 to it. So we're going to have 2 numbers either way. So yeah, and that is Unit 4 for AP Computer Science A. Very, very simple, I know. So please like and subscribe. It's free. It really does help me out. If you've learned something, please do that. Link in the description down below. Sooner or later, I will have a practice test for this unit, so go check that out. So yeah, and I'll see you guys in the next video. I have more APCSA videos, and yeah, go check them out. Adios.